Hello everybody. Welcome back to my channel and today's video, as well as Blind Woman Reviews. So I am back to review Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book in the Throne of Glass series. I will link that playlist below if you have not watched any Throne of Glass related videos yet. I will link it below. I've sort of been posting them one after another because I kind of read it that way, and I just have been filming all of them that way. I kind of just read without filming, and it's fun though, so it's fine. It's totally fine. Anyway, so I thought I would record this anyway, this way, because I was reading that way. I have all the way up to Empire's Thorns to record, so yeah. Anyway, before I begin, know that there will be spoilers for previous books, and I don't know how much spoilers I'll do for Heir of Fire, but there will definitely be spoilers for previous books in the Throne of Glass series. So check out the previous reviews for that too. If you want to know what I think before watching this one, definitely. Also, again, I have mentioned the Assassin's Blade here. No need to read it before this book. I will remind you again, no need to read it before this book, but definitely read it before Queen of Shadows, which will be the next review. But I will keep reminding you just because Assassin's Blade is important here. But I will say that it touches on this. There is a point of this book that touches a little bit on Assassin's Blade, but it's not a big thing. I will mention it. So yeah. Anyway, let's begin. Selena has survived deadly contests and shattering heartbreak, but at an unspeakable cost. Now she must travel to a new land to confront her darkest truth, a truth about her heritage that could change her life and her future forever. Meanwhile, brutal and monstrous forces are gathering on the horizon, intent on enslaving her world. Will Selena find the strength to not only fight her inner demons, but to take on the evil that is about to be unleashed? Okay, so I remember recommending this book for After the Ghosts We Keep, because The Ghosts We Keep deals with grief, and this book does so too, but like The Ghosts We Keep, this is also a healing arc. They both do it very well, so I remember recommending it. I recommended the entire series though, because you do have to read the entire series of Throne of Glass before getting to the to to Heir of Fire, because that will help you kind of understand Heir of Fire a little bit better. Heir of Fire feels definitely like a setup to Queen of Shadows. I can tell you that much. It's definitely a setup to Queen of Shadows, and it's definitely like a book that is setting up a bunch of different storylines. We actually follow a bunch of different storylines that are, I guess you can say, loosely connected to each other, but they do not cross, not often. They do not often cross. They are loosely connected to each other, but they do cross in the other books. So because they are loosely connected to each other, you feel kind of like you're reading separate storylines. I remember the first time it kind of bothered me, and then I was like, you know what? It's not too bad. But yeah, I do remember that it bothered me the first time, but then I'm like, it's not too bad. But I read it now, and I'm like, yeah, I can see that. And not it, especially after reading A Song of Ice and Fire, I can see how these like loosely connected storylines kind of connect in a way, and I kind of started to like them because if you have read anything A Song of Ice and Fire related, you know that a lot of the storylines we follow are usually either loosely connected to each other or interconnected. A lot of the time it's loosely connected. For example, Daenerys' storyline is usually loosely connected to everyone else's story. I mean, they all have an overarching story and an overarching plot, but most of the time a lot of these storylines are just loosely connected because they happen in different places in the A Song of Ice and Fire world. So some of them happen at the wall, others happen beyond the sea, like in Bravos or Slaver's Bay or whatever. So they happen in these different places, and because of that, they're technically loosely connected, even though they are connected to an overarching plot. It's kind of the same, I feel, for Heir of Fire, and I can now say I appreciated. Oh, I think I just hit my phone. Sorry. I think I can say I appreciate them more. Appreciate it more, especially after reading A Song of Ice and Fire and being on the fifth book right now, which I will probably be reviewing in a couple of weeks or days. I really need to finish it. It's been kind of hard to finish it. Anyway, so that's kind of what Heir of Fire is, and I can appreciate it. I like the healing arc because it helps with it helps Selena become who she will be in the previous books. One of the things I like is that we find out more about her past. We kind of found out we kind of got that hinted on in Throne of Glass, where she was discussing, I think, her past at some point with Kale and saying that, her parents died 10 years earlier and that she climbed into the bed beside them thinking that there were, I believe she was discussing this with Kale, correct if I'm wrong, she thought that the bed was wet with water and that it was from the rain, and she found out it was, and then eventually she realized it was blood. And that is kind of how Arobin Hamel found her frozen in a river half to death and eventually trained her into his protege. So it's something that was discussed because Arobin also made her break her hand so that she was better with her left hand, which, ow ow to the hand breaking, ouch. So that's something that was definitely discussed. And something I like is that this book brings up an interesting, I think, discussion on names. And the reason I say this is because Selena doesn't use Selena or Aelin. She doesn't use any of those names. She uses the name Elentia to talk to everybody else. That's how she introduces herself. She says her name is Elentia. And this is a name that Nehemia gave Selena in Throne of Glass, because Selena played. Okay, throughout the book, Selena has been playing a bunch of different roles. You know what I mean? So she's been switching roles quickly. She's Selena the assassin, who was definitely who at the end of the Assassin in the Empire, she was of course arrested and placed in Endovier and suffered the slavery along with her people and Nehemia's people and so on, and a bunch of other people from the Empire. Then she played the role of Lady Lillian Gordana, a jewel thief, in order for her identity not to be discovered, which technically was not worth it since Cain already knew I found out her identity and that she was Selena Sardathian, thanks to the fact that his sponsor told him. So it happened, but she played that because not everybody knew it. So I guess it was worth it to a point, but still. And now, because when Nehemia found out who she was and all that stuff, she gave her a name. She said her name is Elentia, and she told her to use that name when things become when other names become too heavy to bear. And Elentia, she said, is the name. The meaning is the spirit that could not be broken. And it's actually very interesting because she uses that name, but the name, according to her, means the spirit that could not be broken. And yet, Selena in this book is utterly broken. She is broken. Like, we see her in the beginning of a roof, like, where she's just eating this thing called tegya, but also she literally tells us that she, as in her narrative point of view, that she has been drinking a bunch of alcohol, and she hasn't been taking care of herself, and she's just been like gambling and fighting and doing all this stuff, but because she is utterly broken after Nehemiah's death, completely broken. So it's kind of interesting how she uses a name her friend gave her that means the spirit could not be broken, but she herself is utterly broken, and she cannot and she is not caring for herself. She doesn't care about anything or anyone, to the point where she will start fights for no reason. Like when she met Rowan, there was a point where they were fighting, and they fought each other. Their friendship in this story is kind of like an enemies to friendship type, because they hate each other. They literally hate each other in the very beginning before they kind of start becoming friends, and it turns out they both have a dark story. And what's really interesting about that is that Sarah J Maas does this a lot. Like in A Court of Thorns and Roses, there's darkness between the two mates. In House of Earth and Blood, there is, both of them are facing something dark in a way. It's something interesting. I like it though, because one of them is not complete light and the other one is also not complete light. So it's kind of like dark souls, dark pasts helping each other out. And I can go with that because it's interesting. I like that. But yeah, they both have a pretty dark history, but also so do the other characters of this book. I guess with the exception, well, actually no, I think Kale has somewhat of a dark history. I'm not as interested in his dark history because honestly, I have a problem with Kale. I had a problem with him Throne of Glass. I'm telling you, he was an asshole. In Crown of Midnight, he was fine. In Heir of Fire, he's just fine. He's just fine. I don't care. Like Kale annoys me, even though I can appreciate Kale's loyalty to Dorian. Dorian is adorable. He's like the cinnamon roll type of character. He sees the best in everybody. But yes, so she is utterly broken, though she's using a name that says the spirit that could not be broken. Her spirit is utterly broken. And now she has to learn to use her magic in order to get information on the word keys, which was discussed at the end in detail in Crown of Midnight, which is technically what the king has and how he was able to conquer the entire most of the continent really and become an empire. And now he's all powerful and was able to ban magic and everything. Here we also learned how it's also how the magic was stopped, and it turns out there were there was kind of like a spell cast where all there were three locations, and and when she froze, they all of them were kind of constructed to freeze magic, but if one was destroyed you could technically get magic back. So that's something interesting. We do follow Kale's storyline, trying to get information on how to protect Dorian, since he has it was discovered that he had magic in Crown of Midnight, and Selena promised she would be back though to him, because they were actually friends. They did become good friends. And interestingly too, Selena also kind of is in this book, though Rowan doesn't realize it till like he got yelled about it, but she is looking for some form to get back to herself and for friends, but Rowan kind of keeps pushing her down, and he did get annoying in the beginning. I'll admit it. I was annoyed by him in the first time I read it, and now that I'm reading it again, I kind of can I can sort of understand slightly and how he's super impatient over everything, but still. So she is looking for that. And she she doesn't usually want to be bothered, so people stay away from her and do a lot of, and she gives off the signs, but she also wants to kind of get back to herself. And while that's happening, we also meet the Iron Teeth witches. Mainly, we follow mainly the point of view of Minon Blackbeak, but basically, these witches are have been contracted by the king to do a to help him to help, I guess, reinforce his army, and so and they would go back to the wastes and be back home. Now this is actually brought up in Assassin's Blade, particularly in the novella The Assassin in the Desert, where Ansel tells Selena about a story about the witches and how her sister was killed by an Iron Teeth witch. Well, not her sister, her sister's friend, I think it was basically killed by an Iron Teeth witch, or hurt in general by an Iron Teeth witch, and how the wastes have been cursed, were cursed in general, and that it wouldn't nothing would grow if they lived there, and it turns out the Iron Teeth witches are still trying to get home, and they are killing Krakens. It is one of which is one of the reasons. But yes, now we follow Minon's point of view, and we get to see how brutally, honestly, the at least the Blackbeak clan trains their people, um, and and how she was raised to be, and it's an interesting thing, especially at the end when Minon is made to kill Rhiannon. Not, is it Rhiannon? I think that's her name, Rhiannon. And she is a Kraken witch, and she was executed at the end of the war games, where Minon becomes wing leader, and she's the one that's kind of like leading the witches and all this stuff now, in order to basically just to help the king do as he will do. So that's the interesting part, and we also learn more about the Vogue, and how now they are being let in, and how Vogue are now controlling some of the soldiers, and these soldiers are attacking. We're planning to attack Mistwood, or Mistward, where a bunch of half fae pretty much stay, like she did. So it was an interesting it's an interesting story. And while Kale is trying to protect Dorian, also he has some definite prejudices about magic, and how you know what would be like if they return magic, what will keep the people using magic in check. And I'm just like, listen, in Crown of Midnight you were fine. You're still an asshole. You're still a jerk. Like, I hate you. I hate you sometimes, Kale. Like, I like and dislike you. Like, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to deal with Kale at times, and I'm just like, ugh, I'm the reader, and I wanna go into the book just so I can slap Kale or punch. And the interesting thing is that unlike Kale, Dorian has very little issue with magic. He just wants to control his, and he is afraid of being discovered. So he actually ends up meeting this healer. Her name is Sorsha, and she's lovely. A moment of silence for Sorsha, beginning now. Yeah, so Sorsha is lovely. She ends up being the healer that has been healing them at night, specifically when Selena was in Crown of Midnight, when after it was discovered that Selena was Fae, and she had to go into that world, and she healed Fleetfoot and everything. So she was the one, but she never said anything. And she never said anything, but she has always had a crush on Dorian, because there was a time when she came like 6 years earlier. He looked at her and he noticed her, and since then she's had a bit of a crush on him. It's cute. It's cute. He accidentally loses control of his magic. She covers it up, and he helps her, and she starts helping him, trying to push his magic back, because because so that he won't be discovered. And but then they start a relationship, and it is adorable. Their relationship is adorable. It's super cute. He wants to protect her, she wants to help him, and it is a very lovely thing. It's lovely. And we also meet Adian, who genuinely hates Dorian. But it turns out he is the king's greatest general. But he's also a rebel, and and the king hasn't suspected that. But basically, Kale and Adian are working together. And one of the things that I found very interesting about this book that I think resonates in real life is there's a scene where Dorian and Kale are having a conversation about Selena and her magic, and he is uh Kale is talking about his issues with magic and how he how he thinks about it. And Dorian tells him something along the lines of, I don't have the exact quote, but I think it would have been great if I had it. But basically, he tells him something along the lines of, like, you didn't love her, you only loved parts of her, and you can't choose. Like, he tells him he doesn't love Selena, she doesn't love Selena, and that he never loved all of her, and that he cannot choose what parts of Selena to love. And that Kale was basically upset because, he found out more about her, and that she was a certain way, but that if he really loved her, he can't choose what parts of Selena to love. And that is something I feel that resonates in real life, only because people have, at least in my experience, people have sometimes been, people like to choose what parts of people to love, and they get disappointed when they find other things at times. They get really, it becomes a very hard thing at times. People have prejudice, of course they do, because if someone is different, it's hard for them to understand. And, like, it's understandable why they are upset, but sometimes it's just it can be very hard on the other person. I, for one, am fully blind, and um, there's a constant look at, like, there's a constant thing that happens that people, um, sometimes, people want to, like, cure. It's almost like they want to cure my blindness, and there's some people that are like, if there's a cure, you should take it, or like, if, like, just take the cure. And I'm like, if there was one, retinoblastoma has none, but if, like, that was a thing, that's a thing that comes up, and I'm like, no, that's not something that I'm interested in. And society itself would promote that, because if you are disabled, you're considered to be broken in a way, and they want to heal you, cure you, they want to fix you. And it's an unfair thing, because at the end of the day, we're just not able to do certain things, but that doesn't mean we want to be quote unquote fixed. Some of us feel great. I am perfectly happy with being blind. I have adapted to it. And with the myriad of challenges I face, I don't feel like a cure is necessary. Honestly, I feel like a challengeless life would be boring. And the point is, I don't need sight to do the things I want to do. I don't need sight to write my book. I don't need sight to record this video and review this amazing book. I don't need sight to use my Mac, because Apple really cares about its accessibility and customers with disabilities, and they have all their accessibility packed into the program, so that when I use it, I don't have to ask people to help me log into my computer. All I have to do is, like, literally, when I started, all I had to do was click Command F5, voiceover would be on. Actually, not even. Voiceover was on the moment my computer turned on. But if I was to use another Mac that was set up and the voiceover was off, all I have to do was click Command F5, and voiceover would come on immediately. It's things like that that I like about Apple. But also, it's things like that society needs more of, because I feel like sometimes we want certain things and we cannot have them. And some people get annoyed by that. But you can't choose what parts of people to like, and you cannot choose, and you cannot think that people need to be fixed, because some people just don't need to, and we're perfectly fine exactly as we are. I went on a rant, but honestly, that scene felt so relevant to me, to life, to the idea of being cured because I'm blind. And it's sad, but that's what society is. It's not built for me as a blind person. It's built for you who are able to you able-bodied people who are able to do whatever it is, but it isn't built for us. We have to work to get what we need. People who are fully able, they have challenges too, but it can be easier for them in different ways. Anyway, that's just a scene I found so relevant. Another thing I found super relevant in this book is the healing arc, because right now Selena's in a place where even like everything, her self-esteem is gone. Like everything is gone for her. Everything is completely gone, and she does, she basically just is trying to get back up, but at the same time she sort of can't in certain parts. And Rowan is pushing her down before helping her up, and eventually helps her up at the end. But I understand that relevant healing arc. I had self-esteem issues as a kid because of my blindness too. So I went through bullying, I went through a bunch of things, and I had self-esteem issues for a couple of years before I kind of stopped caring and just got numb and annoyed to this. I still think my self-esteem can go back up and down, but it's a thing. And I know the feeling of being discouraged, which is something that I think Selena goes through a lot. Um, she does get discouraged a lot. Like she has no encouragement in this book to continue. Not even like the only thing that's kind of keeping her is the oath she swore to Nehemia, that she would see her kingdom freed. And but she doesn't want to do anything about her own kingdom because she just feels like she'd be tied down by the crown again, and she just doesn't want to. But she wants to free Nehemia's kingdom. And by the end, what's interesting about the end is that she ends up facing her past and goes to as Aelin, but she faces it in a life or death battle where some of the Vogue, I think it's like a Vogue prince, was trying to like push push her down and have them control her. And we see exactly what happened, and how her Aunt Maeve, who she is now seeing because she needs more information about the word keys, has been wanting to see Selena ever since she was a kid. And she is and she's been wanting to do that. She frowned on the marriage between Evelyn and Orlo. I think that Orlo. I can't remember her father's name, but she didn't like their marriage. She didn't approve, but they still did, and they basically gave him. Oh, give me a second, you guys. Anyway, sorry, I'm back. Let me make sure this light is on. Oh, it is. Yay. No one turned it off. Anyway, so they wanted to Siri. Bye. Anyway, they wanted to so basically Evelyn made her word that she would see Aelin, but basically made excuses not to. And because Maeve wanted Aelin/Selena. Aelin and Selena are the same people. It's just Aelin is her actual name. Just know that. I talked about this at the end of Crown of Midnight, where we find out that basically Chaol finds out that Selena is really Aelin Astra Galathinius, the last princess of Terrasen, or the princess of Terrasen in general. Anyway, so she wanted Aelin to submit to her power, while Evelyn wanted her to control her power and not let it let it control her, but also she wanted her to put out fires. So they, ever since she was a kid, the tutors have been teaching her to put out fires, not to set them. And especially because she can lose control. And one of the things that ended up happening is that one of the incidents that actually happened is she ended up getting banned from a library because she ends up um sorry, because she ends up destroying very rare and important books by accident. And she ends up and they end up banning her from the library. And um it's a sweet scene because her and Adian are cousins, and Adian tells her, who cares what these people think? All you did was destroy a couple of books. I mean, when we're older, we can destroy it. Like, we can destroy that library if you want. And he's like 5 years older than her, and it's hilarious. But basically, that's something she kind of felt bad for. She didn't mean to destroy the books, but she was getting lectured on decorum, and she got mad. Um, and one of the things that's brought up in the scene is that Aelin loves books. She loves reading books. And she told her father that the reason she loves books is that those fictional characters are her only friends that she has. And that is very sad, but also super, at times, relatable, because there are times when I think of fandom and I'm like, I feel more supported by an anime fandom or an anime in general and books than most people, because when most people wanted to or would think bad, like would like try to push me away and isolate me, anime makes me feel better because anime doesn't do that. Anime is supportive and I love it. um and books too. So I can understand that. And I can also understand that the lessons that they wanted to teach her and stopping fires the way her mom wanted to also kind of isolated her from other children, because none of the other children wants to play with her. Only Adian, who wasn't really afraid of her and who also would be her blood sworn protector when they're older, when she became queen, because it's a tradition that's only given to one person. He was the only one that would be willing to play with her, and he's not her age. So although the adults would like spoil her and try to get their kids to play with her, none of the kids wanted to play with her. So in a way, she was also heavily isolated. Something pretty relevant in my case for a lot of different reasons. Mainly because I feel like in certain areas, I feel like I was, and I had to fight to be included in other areas. Like, I remember in 8th grade, there was like everybody was exercising, and for some reason, and who was showing off this exercise for the gym teacher, and the gym teacher would constantly skip my name, and I was like, "Are you serious?" That's the one thing I did not like about this gym teacher. He would skip my name, and I had to be like, "Hey, I can do it too," or have my aide help, and I'm like, you know what? There are certain things that are just really annoying. And my freshman year, I had to sort of fight for being more included in gym and being able to participate in gym too. I wrote an entire story on it too, and I complained in my IEP, and then I have to fight too much, and it's annoying. So yes, I kind of understand the isolation. And also, not to mention the fact that Arabin made her fear her title, and she had to change that in order to be free and be Selena. But now she herself is afraid of her own magic, and that is one of the things that she has to fight all the time in order to control her magic. She has to be able and willing to kind of um not submit to, but like be able to master her magic. And in order to do that, she has to fight not to be afraid of her magic. And I think that's an interesting journey. Like, Selena had an interesting journey, Manon had an interesting setup, and Dorian also had an interesting journey where he had a love, like a really lovely relationship, but by the end, because it was discovered, the king ended up executing Sorsha because she was also a rebel. And Adian also got captured and was about to be, and was also going to be executed and ordered because he confessed because Kale, to save Kale, and he ended up and then Dorian was collared, and one of the Valk princes was basically is now controlling him. So there is a setup for Queen of Shadows in the rest of the books, the things in this book. But all of these characters go through an interesting journey. Mainly Selena and Dorian, I feel, and Adian as well, because Adian kind of gets to know how his cousin was and everything that she went through Kale. Even if Kale has his own issues. But that was quite interesting. Also, the one thing I also found very interesting was by the end when she was asking Maeve for information, how she kept her city hostage with fire. Now that was good. That was very interesting. And how she purposely she ended up freeing Rowan from her, and he swore a blood oath to her instead. And they separated because she was coming back to Otterlin, and and he wouldn't have any magic. He also just wouldn't have and she wanted him to stay and that she'll send for him. That was, I think, an interesting ending, and I liked the ending, and it would lead up to Queen of Shadows. So yeah. Anyway, I know I went all over the place in this book, but I love it so much, and I just wanted to talk about it because it's amazing. Let's be honest, this needs a TV show. This needs a TV show, because as a TV show, they can explore so much. And it was supposed to be adapted by Hulu, but for some reason they're not doing Throne of Glass. But apparently I read that some time ago, that Hulu is actually adapting A Court of Thorns and Roses as a show, and Sarah J. Maas is helping out. So who knows? Maybe A Court of Thorns and Roses will get the show. But Throne of Glass needs one too. Anyway, let me know in the comments your thoughts on Heir of Fire. Let me know what you think. I know I went all over the place, but I needed to set up some interesting parts. I will be reviewing Queen of Shadows in my next video. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching. Until next time, happy reading, everybody.